I am doing this as a response to a friend and a client who had some questions about what Anthony Wiliiam in his latest book, Cleanse to Heal, what he's saying to people who have chronic health conditions about the microbiome. He's saying that the microbiome is not the be-all end-all, that gut health isn't the place necessarily to start, that is not going to help you heal. And this flies in the face of a lot of what is out there these days in terms of advice. And he's saying you can't just heal your gut probiotics, and let's investigate that. I've got a drawing here that I want to look at with you, and we'll talk about this idea. So I'm sharing this with all of you so that you can, have an opinion as well. Okay, folks, so here's the drawing, and of course this is the digestive system in a very, very simplified form, and incorrectly beside it, instead of sitting on top of it, as it were, is this the thoracic combination of the heart and lungs, which would be sitting over top of here would be a diaphragm, and then this would be the liver and the stomach liver would be here, and this would be right under the diaphragm. So this is what we're going to start with, and I'm going to show the relationship between the gut, okay, which is extremely simplified here, and viruses and bacteria that are known to be real opportunists. Okay, so this over here is the argument that Anthony Wiliiam has. This is where you need to start. These are the bad things that are causing you to have your chronic health problems, and you need to deal with them. And you know what? I think he's right, because there is, if we zoom out here, you can see that there's a lot of connection between like some bad cycles over here and what's going over here in the gut. So what's the connection? Okay, so we're going to get into what the connection is. We're also going to get into this positive association with other things over here that have the green arrows. And so the gut is actually very heavily an influencer of these guys, and these guys are heavily an influencer of them. And so the argument is that if you have these issues like Epstein-Barr virus, that could be a trigger for hypothyroid problems like Hashimoto's down the line. If you have something like herpes simplex, then that's going to wear you down. If you have Prevotella or a bad case of strep, these viruses, these bacteria are probably at the root of a lot of your problems, your chronic health problems. And so what I want to talk about is that these are not always a problem for people. So they live in most people, and it's usually not a problem. And the reason that it's usually not a problem is they don't even trigger your immune system because they're there in such low amounts, and they're just waiting because they're weak viruses and bacteria that aren't really going to be able to take you over or do what they want to do, consume your nutrients and like take over your system for their benefit. They're not going to be able to do that unless you are weakened. And so what makes them opportunistic. They are waiting for a signal to trigger them to proliferate. Okay. And why then are they a problem for some people, not for others? Well, usually they're problems for people that have had some really hard times. Okay. And people who react to things with stress. And when you get into a really stressed state, you have these signals like norepinephrine, cortisol, and epinephrine. You have these types of chemicals, these compounds in your system at an increased rate, and that triggers these viruses. They actually have a way of sensing how much of these stress hormones are in your system, and that is going to trigger their proliferation and their growth. And when these problematic viruses and bacteria are proliferating, when they're growing, they are going to create more pathogenic compounds. That's what they do. That's how they make you sick. This is one of the things that they do. So the relationship with something like strep and pathogenic compounds, and then back here to the gut, is that if you have the right kind of microbes in the gut, they actually not only make it harder for something like strep to live, but if you have Saccharomyces boulardii, not only is it competing with the strep, making it harder for the strep to live, it's actually degrading some of the pathogenic compounds that the strep is going to create in your body. So these pathogenic compounds can be released when these viruses and bacteria are triggered to proliferate because of stress. And once they're creating these pathogenic compounds, some of these horrible things that they make, which are really toxic for us, this triggers more stress-related dysbiosis. So this is affecting the gut, okay? So when you have these compounds, it raises your stress hormone levels, and that is this stuff, which means that it's, emphasizing that this cycle can continue. So they really set it up to benefit themselves, right? But when this is happening, when these stress hormones are triggered, it's also creating a really bad situation, which is increasing the permeability in the gut, okay? So stress-associated leaky gut means that the stress compounds and the hormones and these other pathogenic compounds are all irritating the gut, and they're also affecting the type of microbiome that you have. They're going to affect the gut through inflammation. They're going to affect the tight junctions in the gut, and opening of the tight junctions is going to happen. And some of the compounds that are going to leak in and out of the gut include LPS, which is going to be present in the lumen, which is going to be caused by the stress and the hormones and the other toxic compounds that are being produced by these viruses. So are they the place to start? Maybe, or is it the stress the place to start? Because that's what's triggering these to be a problem in the first place. Do you need to deal with your trauma, your family issues, your, things that you've been through, the things that your family's been through, all of the childhood trauma, all the things, and deal with your stress? Yes, I think you do. But there is also this whole issue with the leaky gut. Yeah, don't be afraid to make noise in the background there. It's okay. We understand. You live here too. Okay, so you can see here that in 2015, this famous medical journal called Frontiers of Immunology, they reported that leaky gut, was the biggest killer of humans. And so not these guys necessarily, that they were not associated with, the most deaths and serious illness in humans, but rather leaky gut. When they broke down all of these studies and did a huge meta-analysis, multiple different studies, they narrowed it down to leaky gut and said this is what is most connected to illness and death in humans, because it leads to this inflammation. We know that inflammation is associated with every single illness that's out there and every single disease process. And this overly leaky gut, which is really increased intestinal permeability. I just knocked something off the table. Sorry about that noise. And so what you have here is, again, the lipopolysaccharides are increased, which is extremely toxic, which causes more inflammation and actually starts to kill off some of the bacteria. So some of the beneficial microbes, when they're proliferating in the gut, they're creating lots of great neurotransmitters like dopamine that helps to keep us motivated and on task. Serotonin, it affects GABA. Okay, a lot of these neurotransmitters, they are predominantly made in the gut, and they're all dependent on what bacteria is there. That's going to affect which neurotransmitters are created. And so if you have a lot of GABA, and you have a lot of, it affects the amount of progesterone you have, then you're going to sleep really well and you're going to be really calm. And if you have the opposite, if you have opposite kind of gut bacteria, then maybe you won't be making enough progesterone, enough GABA, enough serotonin, and you may have a mood disorder. So when you have a mood disorder, this is going to make your life increasingly stressful, and this will in turn raise your stress hormones, and you are going to feel more fearful with the wrong gut bacteria because of the type of sorry for the noise, the types of hormones and other compounds that they make. So over here, this is going to raise these levels, which is going to, of course, feed into this cycle. And what this cycle is here with the mood disorders and the stress and the pathogens, all these toxins, this is an activated sympathetic nervous system. So in your autonomic nervous system that runs automatically, the one that makes your heart pump and your lungs breathe and all that stuff that you don't even think about, that's reflective, you have two different branches in that autonomic nervous system. One of them is this sympathetic, and that is usually what's going to be active when you have this kind of negative cycle going on, especially when you're experiencing stress. And that is going to cause or be associated with poorer vagal tone. You're going to have more leakiness in the gut. You're going to have constriction of blood flow. You're not going to be able to digest. You're not going to be able to rest very well and sleep very well. You are going to be in fight or flight mode if that is the case. So if we come over here. I'm trying not to walk in front of the light so that everything will be visible. Then what we're looking at over here is a different kind of cycle where we're positively influencing the health of the gut and we're positively influencing our nervous system. So breath work, this is really where it starts. Deep diaphragmatic breathing, and it just makes me so aware of the fact that I'm probably breathing pretty shallowly right now as I'm presenting to you. So I'm going to take a big long exhale if you want to take one with me. And a long exhale. And if you do that 3 times, and you do that in the morning, these 3 minutes of deep breathing or 3 deep breaths during the day can improve your sympathetic tone. So you can spend a few minutes or a few breaths to get yourself into a more parasympathetic state. That's green light, that's positive. That's what we want. Parasympathetic state gets triggered to relax us. And when you have that, when you have breath work and deep diaphragmatic breathing with a long inhale and a long exhale, this actually can help to slow the heart rate. So when we slow our heart rate, we're actually also going to be having a healthier heart that has better heart rate variability, which is a sign that we're not in a stress state, that we're in a better, more parasympathetic dominant state. And when you're doing that deep breathing, you're going to be stimulating this nerve. So the nerve runs from the brain down the spinal column, and as it does, it branches out to all of the organs, all of the major organs along the way. And so this is just, a bit of an abstract here, what's going on here with the vagus nerve. But as you can see, it innervates, the lungs, and it innervates the heart, and the vagus nerve innervates the stomach, and it also innervates the colon. In fact, it is essentially the major nerve that all of the other nerves come from. And the vagus nerve is deeply connected to the gut. And in fact, most messages go from the gut upward to the brain. It is not the inverse, It is mostly the neurotransmitters are made in the gut and go this way. Most of our immune system is in the gut, and then the messages get sent out from there. And so it's really the brain is receiving information from the gut. And that is why a lot of us emphasize the importance of a healthy gut, because that is going to affect your mind state. And as you can see over here, your mind state is incredibly important when you're fighting off viruses and bacteria. So you really want to do anything that is going to increase the heart rate variability and lead to better open blood vessels so that they are relaxed. When you're stressed, your blood vessels constrict to bring up your blood pressure so that you're actually able to have more blood to your muscles so that you can run away. But here, your heart rate is able to have better circulation because your blood vessels are dilated. Your blood pressure is going to be lower. These open blood vessels are going to have better blood flow to places like the gut. So there will be better saturation of nutrients and things flowing back and forth a lot better. The innervation of the gut is going to be better, which means you're going to have better digestive tone. So you're going to have a better sending of messages from the stomach to the brain and back saying, hey, it's time to release digestive like hydrochloric acid here, or further down, pancreatic juice, or further down, like the digestive enzymes, things like that. So the stomach is going to be signaled better because you have better vagus nerve tone, because you've massaged the vagus nerve, having that deep breath. And when you have the deep breath, it's not just deep down into the body. You're breathing into the back body. You're breathing into the forefront of the body. You're breathing both side to side, up and down. You're really breathing in all dimensions. And when you're doing that, it's going to, the diaphragm moving up and all that is going to stimulate the vagus nerve, Other things that stimulate the vagus nerve might include cold showers or just cold exposure, heat exposure, and things like saunas. We all know that all these things are good for us. Another thing that's good for us is acute exercise. Acute means that it's short and intense, okay? And so it's really not just going for a walk here, but when you do acute exercise, like you lift weights to exhaustion or you dance your bum off at a festival or something, when you stop, your body thinks that you've just run away from the saber-toothed tiger, in the old fight or flight kind of story that everybody always gives. And when that's over, it's so important to bring the heart rate down, because you've raised your heart rate and that was stressful on the body. Your body then really floods you with a bunch of signals to get you into parasympathetic. So that acute exercise, the reason it's so beneficial is because afterwards it gets triggered. The parasympathetic gets triggered. So the good response, the nice calm rest and digest response, gets triggered to relax you after the exercise is over. So this is a post-exercise benefit. And then boom, what happens there? You've got improved sympathetic tone, and it's going to be easier for you to move into a parasympathetic state. And your parasympathetic is going to be more easily triggered, which is exactly what you want. And so another way that you can improve your parasympathetic tone is with 3 minutes of deep breathing upon awakening. And if you do that when you first wake up, then you're setting the stage for the day. And this is a really great place to be in. So you're also going to be stimulating your digestive system and preparing it for anything that you would like to eat. So this is something, if you don't have time to do it before you get up in the morning, you can also do it before any meal. And this is going to prep your digestive system. When your digestive system is relaxed and it digests its food better and you're in a parasympathetic state, you're going to have better flow of digestive enzymes, bile, hydrochloric acid, all of those things, and you're going to have better physical activation of all of these things. And the microbiome is also happier when you're in a parasympathetic state. There's different chemicals present. That means that you may have, when you have this activated digestive system, you may have better digestion, one that's able to eat a wider diversity of fruits and vegetables and other foods without reacting. Because when there is less intestinal permeability, there's going to be less of the compounds of food going out into the bloodstream, and then you're going to have less reaction. So you're going to be able to enjoy a wider, diverse diet. This wider diversity means that you're going to be contributing a greater type of microbes to the microbiome, some of which may be soil-based microbes, especially if this includes some fresh vegetables, or maybe even some just really whole unprocessed foods. Then this is going to be contributing, especially if they're organic, going to be contributing soil microbes, which is really good at resetting gut diversity. The soil microbes and the better diversity can lead to better postbiotics produced by your microbiome, like short-chain fatty acids, things like butyrate, which are really good, and BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which means that you can think better, which means you can make better decisions, so that you might actually decide to go out and do some gardening or get into nature. When you do that, of course, you're feeding this positive cycle. You might grow some vegetables, you might forage for some mushrooms, or you might just get exposed to some microbes in that environment of nature or in the garden, and that can also lead to better microbial diversity. It's also been tied to, scientifically, calmer and better moods, which then it also contributes to better digestion and all of that, which also can lead us back to, boom, better parasympathetic tone, because being in nature or gardening is actually related to having better parasympathetic tone. So it all does start with taking some breaths, maybe doing some acute exercise, maybe getting out gardening and in nature. These things are incredibly important, not just to make you feel less stressed out, but because of the connection to actually getting over those deep-seated reasons for why you are so ill. So I hope that this makes sense. I didn't answer the question, is Anthony Wiliiam, correct, or is he incorrect? I just wanted to share some of the things, some of the considerations to how this all plays together. And then you can tell me what you think when it comes to the microbiome and its importance in fighting off viruses and getting better from chronic disease. Thank you. Bye-bye.